Hi, I'm Paul Friedman. I'm the founder of the Marriage Foundation. If you're visiting us for the first time and you haven't subscribed yet, do so now. But if you're here for the first time, you should know how different we are from virtually every other marriage advice and marriage help site that you come to. I am not a Western psychologist. I got into this quite differently than most, in that I was already mature, had been married. I didn't discover the right way to be married by my own marriage. In fact, at the time I discovered this, all of these principles that I'm sharing with you through this topic coming up, which is when your husband doesn't do enough for you. I used to be a divorce mediator. And that was way back, over 22 years ago. And I had a couple, because I'm a communications expert, I had a couple ask me to help them with their marriage. And I wanted to do a good job. I thought it would be fine to give it a shot. They'd already gone to marriage counseling and failed. And so I had to investigate. Spoke to my friends, the couples counselors and all, who used to send me my clients, and realized they didn't really have a standard protocol. They had some similar, shall I say, impressions of their clients and maybe how to help them, but they really didn't grasp, in my opinion, what was necessary to help a couple, to help an individual. And so I began my own investigation, and I began with a question of, why do we get married in the first place? And believe it or not, that wasn't the first question that came to my mind. But when it did come to mind, I took it very seriously, as so should you. Why do we get married in the first place? Because you might say that's what should set us up on how we live in our marriage. What do we do? What are we trying to achieve? And the answer, surprisingly, wasn't that easy to come to either. And when I did arrive at the answer, which is we get married, yes, we fall in love, and that's why we marry who we marry, but why get married? And there's a lot of answers that are good, but none of them come close to, we get married to be happy. It's embarrassingly simple, isn't it? We get married to be happy. So that's like saying, okay, I'm buying a car so I could get from point A to point B. I have to go to work in the morning. I like to travel a little bit, so I'm getting a car. So then you take care of your car in a way that it's always going to start in the morning. You make sure you change the oil, you keep your windshield clean, you adjust your mirrors. You operate your car according to the bottom line principle of why you got it, so that it's functioning all the time. But we don't do that in our marriage. So what I discovered was the world is so far off in its understanding of marriage. And so I dug deeper and deeper. And I shifted my practice. I was a divorce mediator, and I got $300 an hour plus, and that was way back before 2000. And so I didn't do this for the money. I really discovered marriage. It's like, why don't we know this stuff? Why aren't we taught? And that's not a condemnation, because there's a lot of things we don't learn in this world, to no one's fault. We just don't know. So I discovered that marriage is an amazing entity. Literally, and I hope I'm not scaring you away when I use this term. There's no religion here that I'm trying to allude to, but it's a spiritual path, an individual spiritual path that we take with our soulmate. And when we know what we're doing, when we keep in mind that we are in this marriage to be happy, and there's a second reason we get married, and that's to experience love. And when we keep in mind that we're in this marriage to be happy and to experience love, then we know that all the things that we do in our marriages, all the ideas and concepts of setting boundaries, of blaming, of criticizing, all of these things don't help our marriages, do they? Even this title, when your husband doesn't do enough for you, it's basically a criticism of your husband, which may or may not be true, but it doesn't make any difference because you got married to be happy. And even though he doesn't do enough for you, you still love him, right? And so rather than allowing the mind to focus on this, let's call it a flaw, this flaw that he has, where he doesn't do enough for you. And I'm sure you could list a bunch of his flaws, and I'm sure he could list a bunch of your flaws. How is that going to help you achieve the goals that all of us have for our marriages, which is happiness, and not just happiness, but an ever-increasing happiness and an ever-expanding love? Think about that. Think about what it means to be truly happy. Not happy because you got a new car, speaking of cars, or because all of your siblings are visiting and you're going to have a good time, but this very deep happiness, because that's what I discovered is very possible in marriage. Marriage is amazing when you know how. Now, you should subscribe so you learn how from these videos, but I also have written a couple of books. And if your marriage is in trouble, probably it isn't. I'm not selling you anything, but we also have a course for men and a course for women. And I founded this marriage foundation literally at the behest of a fellow mediator who said, Paul, this stuff is amazing. We have to get it out there. And so it was founded as a nonprofit so that we could get it out there and not be concentrated on making money, but focused on helping people like yourself who just never had the opportunity to learn about marriage. You know, I was speaking with my wife this morning about how the world is so, and you have to acknowledge this, there's so much treachery, there's so much deceit, there's so many people who, if you get hit by a car, the first thing they'll do is check your wallet to see if you have any money for them. I mean, it's a tough planet. And so we've learned about morality as a, if you do this, you're going to hell kind of thing. Instead of as a, if you learn to love, if you learn to behave, your life is going to be less and less complicated. You will be more and more calm. You will feel better within yourself. And we didn't learn morality that way. We only learned the negative side, where the hammer comes down when we don't behave the way we should. And sure, that's true. We live in a cause and effect world. However, we should be focused on finding happiness. This should be our main focus in life. So when we get married, our focus should be to bring our world into what I call the sacred space of marriage, where we could experiment not with things that are wrong and how is he going to be affected if I do this, Am I going to get away with it? No. But what can I do to make our lives happier? What can I do to make myself feel more and more love? And the Marriage Foundation has come a long way since its beginning. Now, I did train marriage counselors back in the 2011, and they're all off doing their own thing. But now we're starting to train marriage counselors the right way. We have a course for it online. It's affordable, just like everything else we have. And we're here to change the world with this Marriage Foundation and the teachings I've discovered. So just think again about that. Marriage is an individual spiritual path that two soulmates take together. Think about what that means. What's a spiritual path for? It's a path that is guided, definite, in order to achieve happiness. That's all a spiritual path is, the ultimate happiness. Sure, we include God in that, not a religion, but God is part of our lives. We're part of Him. And so that's involved, but we don't have to talk to God all the time. You could be an atheist and still achieve this spiritual awareness. What is a spiritual awareness? Love. Love is not a material thing. Love is the real deal. It is the ultimate. And it is spiritual by definition because it's not material. You feel it in your heart, not in your mind. So that's it. So more on this topic of when your husband doesn't do enough for you, don't worry about it. I'm not one of these guys who's going to say, well, try doing this, try doing that. And I'll tell you why not. Because all of those things that most people suggest are effectively manipulative. Okay, if I do this, he'll do that. And it reduces your marriage down to sort of a business deal at best, and I have to be conniving in order to get what I need at worst, and it won't work anyway. What does work is to shift your focus to learning how to love Him unconditionally. To give, and you will receive, but in a much different way than you can imagine. Now, at first blush, it sounds like I'm telling you to become a doormat, but I'm not. And I tell men exactly the same thing. Give. Because if you're on a path of what's in it for me, well, that's just not what marriage is. And so it would be like having a car and thinking it's something else and operating it that way, it won't deliver. The whole idea is to adjust your behaviors to what a marriage is meant to be so you gain the greatest benefit, which is happiness and love. Isn't that so sweet? Marriage is amazing. So I hope you like this video. You could leave a comment if you wish. Definitely peruse our website, see what we have. I think you'll find that it's quite different from others. And I think you'll find it to your liking. I'm Paul Friedman. I founded the Marriage Foundation. I'm glad you stopped by. I hope you visit again. God bless you. Take care.